28b b2. The last thing that we said, or maybe it's really 28b1, the last few lines of 28b1. The last thing we said is that regarding something called Tosfot Yom Kippurim, we said there's something called adding to Yom Kippur. You're not supposed to. It's not that you just do malacha up to. Good morning, Jaime.
Morning.
Morning. We say we're not supposed to do malacha work up to the second where the holiday of Yom Kippur begins. And we also said the same thing. We're not supposed to do work up to the second where Shabbat begins. You're supposed to add to the Shabbat. You're supposed to add to the Yom Kippur. You're supposed to add a little bit before, a little bit after. And what we said yesterday was that the women are also included in this mitzvah of adding to Yom Kippur. And the Gemara under 28b, 28b1, the Gemara is where it says on the right column, Yom Kippurim mid Rabbi Yehuda Marav nafka. Yom Kippurim, don't we learn out from Yehuda Marav that women, why do we need a special pasuk? The Gemara says, why do we need a special pasuk? To say that women are obligated to fast on Yom Kippur. Don't we know that women are obligated to fast on Yom Kippur because of the general rule that women are obligated in the don'ts of the Torah? And the Torah is, there's a don't by Yom Kippur. Don't, which we learn out, that women would be obligated, that they're not allowed to eat on Yom Kippur. So not eating on Yom Kippur is like not eating, same way you can't eat pork, and we don't need a special pasuk to say that ladies can't eat pork. They're included in all the don'ts of the Torah. So why do we need a special pasuk to tell me that women are obligated to keep Yom Kippur? So not to fast, that they have to fast Yom Kippur. So that's what we ended yesterday. The Gemara says, "Lo nitzrach ela tosafet inui." The pasuk that's coming to include women, it's coming to include women regarding not the actual responsibility of fasting on Yom Kippur. That we know ladies have to fast Yom Kippur without the special pasuk. What is it coming to teach us? It's coming to teach us, meaning this, we're talking about the coming to teach us tosos inui, the extra time. Now, why would we think that women would be different than men when it comes to adding to the holiday? So the Gemara says, because I would have thought, the Torah excludes this time period, this extra time, adding to the holiday, is not, if a person doesn't add to the holiday, right? And they go up and they eat up to the moment that the holiday of Yom Kippur begins. They did not add any moment. They did not add anything to the holiday. Right. They went exactly to the time. So there's no punishment of karet. Like by eating on Yom Kippur, if a person eats on Yom Kippur, there's something called karet. There's something called he gets karet, cut off from the next world. There's lashes. And there's a violation of a don't on Yom Kippur. Eating on Yom Kippur is a violation of a don't. It's a violation of a don't, and also don't do that, and it carries with it punishment from the court. Court can give lashes or there's certain punishments. But adding to Yom Kippur, if a person is not careful about adding to Yom Kippur, it does not carry with it that punishment. The court does not give any punishment for the person who does not add to Yom Kippur. And not only they don't give any punishment, the court also, it's not a violation of a don't of the Torah. Being that that's it, came up to the exact time, and so there's no violation there's no punishment from the court for not adding to the holiday Yom Kippur. And not only is no punishment, good morning, Ralph, there's also no violation of a don't. It's a violation of a do of the halacha. But there's a mitzvah, we'll take out the Mishnah Berurah. There's a mitzvah to add, the mitzvah to say, it's like a positive commandment to go ahead and eat Yom Kippur. That means, let's say if Yom Kippur begins at sunset, right? We say, well, so you have to stop. You can't just eat up to the moment of sunset. You have to stop already before. That's called adding to Yom Kippur, or whenever it's considered over, to add a little bit of time to when it's over, and that's a separate mitzvah. It's an independent mitzvah than the mitzvah of not eating on Yom Kippur itself. It's two different mitzvot. So we'll take out the Shulchan Aruch. Let's take out here in the Shulchan Aruch. And by the way, this was a mitzvah that I think there was some people in the Jewish community that might have not did not live up to this the adding of you see, it says in Shulchan Aruch the following, Simon Tov Reish Chet. He says you eat and you're able to eat on Erev Yom Kippur, but you stop before sunset because you need to add to the holiday. So to us, since we're concerned that the night begins by sunset, we restrict that the night might begin by sunset, but we also restrict both ways. We say maybe the night began by sunset, and also that's in the beginning of the holiday. But we don't say the Yom Kippur is over at sunset because maybe it's still day after sunset. We restrict on both ends. That twilight between sunset and dark, it's a gray area. So therefore, we're going to be strict on both ends. We don't eat, like by Shabbat, right? You're gonna refrain from work from sunset, and Shabbat is not over the next day sunset because maybe sunset it's still not dark, so maybe it's still the daytime. So we're strict on both ends. But the Shulchan Aruch says that we need to add to we have to stop eating before sunset because we need to add, and the Shulchan Aruch says you need to add either a little bit or a lot. He does not give us a clear amount of how much you have to add, how much time you have to add, but you have to add either a small amount or a lot. And then he says women who eat and drink up to morning. Women, good to see you. Women who eat and drink up to the time let's say we'll go up to sunset, and they don't add to the Yom Kippur, and they don't know there's a mitzvah to add to Yom Kippur. If they're not going to listen to you, right? If they're not going to listen to you, there's a Gemara right there. If you want to listen, look right over. If they're not going to listen to you, you don't tell them. You don't say anything to them. And this is like a halacha warning that sometimes if you're going to tell somebody something and you're telling them something that's not written openly in the Torah, it's not written openly in the Torah that you have to add to the holiday of Yom Kippur. It's something that we learn out from the drasha, from the way the Torah writes it, because the Torah writes, you have to go ahead and refrain from eating on the 9th of the month of Tishrei. From evening until evening, you have to go ahead and refrain. So now we know the holiday of Yom Kippur begins. When's the holiday of Yom Kippur? On the 10th of the month of Tishrei. But with the way the Torah writes, on the 9th of the month of Tishrei, you have to. So that's alluding to the idea that you got to go ahead and start on the 9th of the month of Tishrei, which is before Yom Kippur. And also you have, and it's me'erev ad erev, you have to go all the way until the next night. You have to add both in the beginning and both at the end, just to bring everybody up to date. We're saying there's a special mitzvah on Yom Kippur that before Yom Kippur begins to add at least a little bit of time to the holiday of Yom Kippur, and also at the end of the holiday to add a little bit. Meaning you don't just, I refrain from eating and drinking when Yom Kippur, the moment the day begin, the night begins, and when the moment the night is over, I start again. No, you're supposed to add something. Okay, very good. It's a special mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to do that. It doesn't say a reason why the Torah why there is this law that you're supposed to add. You can understand why you should add to the beginning of the day, because if you add to the beginning of the day, that will ensure that the day itself you're going to be careful, right? When you play close to the fire, when people play close to the fire, what happens sometimes? They get burned. People stand right at a ledge by the train station, sometimes they fall. So if you're going to eat and drink up to the moment of Yom Kippur begins, right? If let's say Yom Kippur begins at 6 p.m. of the day, the new day, sunset at 6 o'clock. If you're going to eat up to 6, what might happen, Mr. Haber? You might go over. You can understand why you should add to the beginning of the holiday. Maybe that could also be the logic for adding to the end of the holiday. Because if the holiday is going to be over, let's say at exactly, we don't know let's say when it's dark, it's over at 7 o'clock. If you're going to eat exactly the moment the holiday is over, then what's going to happen? You might come ahead and eat a drop early. My clock was a little off. So maybe that could be a nice idea why the Torah itself wants to ensure that you don't violate Yom Kippur. There's another mitzvah in the Torah. The Torah says that you're not allowed to have chametz in your house on the holiday of Pesach. You can't have chametz. You can't own chametz the holiday of Pesach. Now, why can't I own chametz the holiday of Pesach? I'm not going to eat the chametz. So the Torah itself says, I want to protect you. Because if you eat chametz, it's a very serious violation by eating chametz. It carries with it karet. So in order to prevent that you won't eat the chametz, don't have the chametz in your house. By the way, I believe if you want to lose weight on a diet, don't bring the cake in the house. You have the cake in the house, then you go look for it. The best thing is don't bring the, so to speak, inappropriate foods, junk foods, don't bring them into your house. So that's what the Gemara is saying over here. Right. So it's interesting. It's interesting. He doesn't write how the Shulchan Aruch itself doesn't say how much time you have to add. Could be maybe something like a minute, 2 minutes. Technically, it's any amount. That's what it sounds like from the language of the Shulchan Aruch. Morning, Mark. I know there's a truth morning, but we said by Shabbat there's also a concept by Shabbat adding to Shabbat. You should not do work up to the moment of sunset. You're supposed to add something. Yes. Right. Very good. So Erev Pesach. Right. That's much earlier. That's even more. That's what it did. Right. That's from a different pasuk. But that's a good point also. We see that the Torah is giving such fences that we stop eating, on a Torah level, you can't eat chametz from noon, chatzot, Erev Pesach. If Pesach will be tonight, already today, by 12 o'clock, whatever time noon is, I already cannot eat chametz. Also good. There's a concept because the Torah does not want you to have chametz at the time when you're slaughtering the Korban Pesach. The slaughtering of the Korban Pesach begins in the afternoon. So therefore, that's the connection over there. Why chametz has such an early start time. Okay, so the Gemara says, back to the Gemara on 28b1. Now, I was just saying that the women, so the Shulchan Aruch says, the women that eat up to the time and they don't add, so it seems like they didn't believe, the women didn't, it was difficult for many women to accept, to believe there was such a halacha. They didn't believe, they thought there's no problem of eating up to sunset. There were many women that were not careful. Right. It's interesting. This is what the Shulchan Aruch says. The Shulchan Aruch says, women who eat and drink until it's dark or until it's sunset, and they don't know that there's a mitzvah to add. Not only they don't know, they are going, and they're not going to listen to you. Then you don't need to tell them. You shouldn't tell them. if they're not going to listen to you. That's the law. If something that's written in the Torah openly, you should tell them, even if they're not going to listen to you. But if it's not written in the Torah openly, it's learned down, and you know they're not going to listen to you, then we say better they do it unintentionally and do it intentionally. But it's interesting why they were lax in this. What? Right. Okay, I mean, it's not the same level of responsibility that, that 18 minutes, if a person does 10 minutes before, it's also fine. Okay. The Gemara says like this. So I might have thought the Gemara says, since the Torah excluded the additional time to Yom Kippur from the punishment of Karei, and from the violation, and from a don't of the Torah, it's not a violation of a don't. So I might have said lo nischayvu noshim klal. I might have said women should not be obligated at all in adding to Yom Kippur. Kamash malan. I might have thought that women, being that it's a time-bound mitzvah, to add to Yom Kippur, adding to Yom Kippur is a time-bound positive commandment, and a time-bound positive commandment, women are generally exempt. So therefore, that's why we need a special pasuk to tell me that women are obligated in the additional time to stop, to refrain from eating a little bit additional time before Yom Kippur. There is a very famous, to me, I think it's a very beautiful tshuva in Rav Moshe Feinstein, where Rav Moshe Feinstein discusses about there was a time period in his life that he would go into a car. He would get a ride from his house on the Lower East Side to the yeshiva, which was a very short ride, maybe a 2-minute drive, and there someone gave him musar. I should say someone gave him musar. Someone said that Rabbi Feinstein, it doesn't look right that you're going into the car after candle lighting time, and you're arriving, of course, way before sunset, but you're entering into a car after candle lighting. It looks like you're doing something wrong. And he, Rabbi Feinstein, explained that really a man doesn't accept Shabbat at the time that the candle. I mean, he's not. His wife is lighting the candles. So let's say his wife lit the candles 18 minutes before sunset, but he's not accepting the Shabbat yet. He has until close before sunset, and he says I could arrive. He says maybe I could do the trip maybe 3 or 4 times, and I'll still arrive. Same trip that I do once, I could do maybe 3 or 4 times, and I'll still arrive with at least 2 minutes before Shabbat to have that extra time before Shabbat. But since you're bringing it up to me and you think it doesn't look good, I'm not going to go in the car after candle lighting time, even though I will definitely could reach my destination many times before. He just said because someone said it doesn't look so right, and but he didn't accept a man. A man does not need to accept Shabbat 18 minutes. Now I don't know what's in the Sephardic community, what their custom is. A man doesn't need to accept Shabbat 18 minutes before sunset. Usually the lady, when she lights 18 minutes before sunset, she accepts Shabbat generally. Yeah, right, but technically the man is not obligated to accept Shabbat at that time, from the time that the lady
we hold that we don't accept it when they light candles.
You don't have to, exactly. So Moshe, in that shuvah, thank you, Mark, in that letter, he writes, I could reach my destination 3 or 4 times. I could do the trip, and I'll have 2 minutes before Shabbat for extra time. So I saw over there this idea of adding to Shabbat. Rav Moshe Feinstein, what seems like a 2-minute addition to Shabbat is considered that's called an addition to Shabbat. You added 2 minutes. I mean, technically, it could be any amount of time that you add. But I'm saying, I would say that's a good thing to train people, train one's children, train themselves. Try not to go past 2 minutes. The 2-minute warning, right? Football, the 2-minute warning. You like that, Ralph? So you got a 2-minute warning. It should be 2 minutes before Shabbat. You should try to already stop. Use that as additional time. I'm not saying if you're 1.5 minutes before Shabbat, you can't do something either. But I think it's good to train yourself. Yes, Mr. Abel. Right. So I think Rabbi Feinstein, what happened was Rabbi Feinstein trip from his house to the yeshiva was about a good 15-minute walk, 18-minute walk, and maybe he was already getting older, maybe, and therefore he got a ride from his house to the yeshiva. And the person that was driving him was gonna drive him at that time. Rabbi Feinstein was just going to explain why halachically he explained why he didn't do anything wrong by what he did, but nevertheless that was the greatness of Rabbi Feinstein. It's a great letter to read. I recommend everyone to read the letter to see the amazing humility of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, where he said,
I think the person that told him did something wrong.
But he thanks the person. Thank you very much for being concerned for the honor of the Shabbat. He knew the person. It was a fellow friend from the neighborhood. That the person didn't mean anything bad by saying to him. The person meant good, and you got to see. I
didn't say that.
What did you say?
I didn't say he meant something bad, and even when someone insults you, you're supposed to thank them. So, and I get Moshe Feinstein's at a different level, but I don't know. I don't look at unless it was a very big rabbi. I don't see. The multitudes of people telling a rabbi what he should do. I don't know. Right. I don't get that.
Right. So I don't think anyone should tell the rabbi. I think that he could bring up to the rabbi. It might look a certain way. He was afraid that people will. This is what the person.
Yeah, I understand that.
People will look at it and then they'll become lax to Shabbat or whatever. But you got to see how Rabbi Feinstein says, "Chas v'shalom," that I should feel bad that you're bringing it to that you say anything to me. I'm so happy that you said this to me, but you know what? I'm not doing anything wrong. But nevertheless, I'll stop doing it. That was the beautiful.
I think that the teaching is the reaction.
There Obviously, you go.
That's all.
All right, guys.
Okay, beautiful.
By the way, back on the women with the 18 minutes or whatever, whenever they light candles, they too could light candles and have a condition. What my understanding is, I should preface it my understanding is they can light candles right now and have in mind a condition that I'm going to get in the car and drive to my mother-in-law within the 18 minutes.
Yes. They want to press the elevator button.
Whatever they got to do, they still they still have the 18 minutes as long as they're mindful and make a condition.
Exactly. Okay, now we're continuing the Gemara. Now we are turning the page. 28b2, top of the page. Amar, the master said, the rabot et katanim. Kol the rabot et katanim. We said that the word kol, when it says kol ezrach b'Yisrael yeshuv Sukkot, is coming to include minors. That minors are included. We're now at 28b2. The minors are included in the mitzvah of Sukkah, and the Gemara is going to challenge that. A minor is patur from mitzvah. That's what Gemara's question is going to be. At least on a Torah level, it's patur from mitzvot. Let's see how the Gemara explains this point. It says, "Omama kol l'rabot et ketanim." You told me that the word kol includes minors, and minors have the mitzvah of going to the Sukkah. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Vatnan, we learned in the Mishnah, Noshim v'avodim uktanim peturim min Sukkah. We know we have a Mishnah that says that women are exempt from a Sukkah, and minors are also exempt from a Sukkah. So how could you tell me that minors are obligated it seems to be contradictory. You're telling me minors are obligated in a Sukkah, but the Mishnah says minors are exempt from Sukkah. So the Gemara answers, it depends what age minor we're talking about. Look, Kasha, kan b'katan shegiah chinuch, a child that reaches the age of that he's already training, that he could go ahead and be independent. If you want, you have two options: orally, or you could that if he reached the age of training, that child, he has a responsibility to go to the sukkah. Once he does not need, we're going to see, we're going to identify what's the training age for that. And can be katan a child that did not reach the age of chinuch, not reach the age of independence, he's still very young. And if he's still very young, he does not have to go. That's the one who does not have to go to the sukkah. That's the one who's potter from the sukkah. So now the Gemara says, so now you're telling me the child that reaches the age of training, he's obligated to go to the sukkah, and you brought a pasuk. You brought a pasuk to tell me that law. But we know a child that reaches the age of educating the child, it's a rabbinic obligation. It's not a biblical. The responsibility of children have a mitzvot to take a lulav, a boy to take a lulav or eat matzah. That's not a biblical obligation. He's under 13. He has no biblical obligation. It's a rabbinic obligation. And you're bringing me a pasuk. With that pasuk it's indicating a biblical obligation. So how could you say that he's obligated, that this pasuk is telling me an obligation for a child? He's not obligated on the Torah level. And you put a pasuk. If you tell me it's a rabbinic law, like listen to the Megillah, create Megillah. It's a rabbinic law, right? Hearing Megillah says a rabbinic law. Children, we train children to hear the Megillah. Okay, beautiful. But you're telling me a verse from the Torah regarding the mitzvah of Sukkah. That's a biblical law. And you're using a pasuk from the Torah, and the child is not obligated biblically. The Torah doesn't obligate a minor. He's a minor because he doesn't have enough knowledge, he doesn't have enough maturity to obligate him mitzvah. Correct, Mr. Haber? So the Gemara says, you're right. Really, midrabanan. Really, the obligation of a child to go to the sukkah. A child is a rabbinic obligation. Good morning, but the kra asmachta ba'almu. But sometimes the rabbis, when they like to show that the strength of the mitzvah, if they could see that it's alluded to in the Torah, right? You can have a rabbinic law. Sometimes the rabbis like to see when they want to create a rabbinic law, they like to see if it's already alluded to already in the Torah. The Torah God already hinted to this thing, so that it gives them a little extra chizuk when they want to make a decree or a law. They see it's already alluded to in the Torah, and sometimes they know they're going to make this law. We know the rabbis are going to create a rabbinic law to train the child, but if they could show that the Torah is also alluding to it, that adds strength to that law, because it's not only our rabbinic enactment, it's also, we see that the Torah itself is already alluding to it. So that gives a little, I think, extra strength on that mitzvah. So that's what it says. Kra usmachta ba'almu. And it's a smachta. It's something that the rabbis lean on, where they could show you that it's already alluded to in the Torah. Okay, so that's the end of the day regarding the katan's obligation. The minor's obligation to go to sukkah is a rabbinic obligation, and therefore it's upon the parents, the father, to train the child well that he's going to eat in the sukkah. So he's going to have his sandwich. He's having his sandwich in the sukkah. So it's a nice job of the father. Of course, mom wants to help out in the training of the children. We all know the moms help out, but that's the job, to train your child. Throughout the holiday of Sukkot, which is a very long training period, 7-day training, and outside of Israel we have 8 days. We eat in the Sukkah. But the child, when he's going to have bread, a certain amount of bread, it has to be in the Sukkah. So now the Gemara says, Kata she'ena sarach li'imo. The Mishnah says, which child is the one who has an obligation to go ahead and sit in the Sukkah? What's the age? So the Mishnah said, the child that does not need his mother. What does that mean? Every child needs his mother. What does it mean doesn't need his mother? So it means, so there's different opinions in the Gemara. One opinion, Amri de Rav Yanai, Kol shenifneh. Good morning. Any child that goes to the bathroom, he doesn't need his mother to clean him. He's of age to clean himself. That means it sounds like he's toilet trained, which is a very young age, which should be even lower than 6. And then Rav Shimon says, Kol sheneur mishnato, anybody who gets up from his sleep, ve'ini koreh imo. A child, we're talking about at what age a child has to go, we train him to go to the sukkah. So the second opinion says, if he wakes up and he doesn't call his mother, he doesn't call his mother, mom, mom, mom. He's not constantly calling his mother when he wakes up. What? So the Gemara. So the Gemara is going to ask that question, by the way, in a certain sense, in the minors. The Gemara, if you look at the language of Rashi says, he's not tied to his mother to call her all the time that he's awake. A baby, a young kid, it's a lot of times, right, Mr. Haber, he's calling out to the mommy, but once the kid doesn't have to call the mother all the time, so the Gemara says, right, most probably that would be older. 3 years old. So the Gemara says, but what the Gemara says, what do you mean? Gedolim namikori. So really the language of the Mishnah, good morning. The language of the Gemara is when he wakes up, first the Gemara says when he wakes up and he doesn't call his mother, right? That's called that he's reached the age. So the Gemara says, we know Gedolim namikoru. We know that a lot of kids that are already age of education. They could be 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old. They also call their mother when they wake up. Right? Even older children call their mother when they wake up. So the Gemara says, Ela kol sheneya ve'ena kori ima. When a person wakes up and he doesn't constantly call his mother, he calls his mother once, and he waits till his mother comes. That's already considered a age that he's already independent of the mother. So once he reaches that age, a child that's 6 years old, let's say that's the child. When he wakes up, he calls his mom. He's mature enough to wait till mother comes. But someone who's younger than that age, he calls his mother once, then he calls mother again. He keeps on calling ma. He hasn't had the patience to wait. So that's what the Gemara is saying. That's called a kid that doesn't have the patience to wait till his mother comes.
Benchmarks. Why aren't we talking about the same way you take someone for Bakata? So once they could understand what it is they're doing, they have the bina of saying, okay, now I'm thanking Hashem for the food. That's the guy has the mindset. The child has the mindset. He could actually be counted. So once he has the mindset, why can't he now have the obligation of the Sukkah? Why are we talking about calling mommy, mom?
That could also for a lot of mitzvot, that could this age, this is a sign, this indication of someone who calls, it's a sign of lack of maturity, lack of independence. So the rabbis, so it's just the way I presume I could call it a benchmark. If a child it doesn't have that patience, it's a sign of lack of independence, lack of maturity. And like you said about Zimun, we said it has to do with, it's a similar age. It's an age of understanding who you're giving the bracha to. But what we have to do is, but the Gemara is using this.
Doesn't disqualify something? That's my. So with Zimun, you're taking a guy who says, okay, you're 8 years old, and intellectually you understand who you're thanking for the food, or what you're doing. We're going to count you for Zimun. Good?
Right.
Okay. So if the guy doesn't have that, you can't count him.
Right.
Now, if you take a child and you say, okay, at 6 years old or 4 years old, you don't say mommy twice, you only say it once, we're gonna count you in the sukkah. If you say mommy when you're 12 years old twice, we are gonna count you in the sukkah, regardless of you calling mom mom.
But it could be that that child, see, that's a good question. That child who's 12 years old, who doesn't have the patience, and he calls his mother, and then he's not going to wait for his mother to come. Maybe he's in a certain sense, he's showing that he's not okay.
He's still chayav.
He's chayav because we hope that he's really mature, but maybe he's just in this area. But this is what the Gemara is using as some sort. And what age is this? So the halacha defines this age, most probably around 6 years old would be this age. That the halacha doesn't, at what age is a child obligated in the sukkah, right? Based on,
And they are chayav.
right, you're saying if
And
the
the
child,
other way,
it will disqualify if they don't know who they're making the bracha to. Right. So if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, and when it talks about the laws of sukkah, so I think it says over there, here, the Shulchan Aruch, it says the following. It's in Simin Tov Reish Mem. The Tov Reish Mem, let's see what comes out la halacha l'maaseh. Says a child that doesn't need his mother, and how does it define that? He's about 5 or 6 years old. So there's wiggle room. It depends on the sharpness and the maturity of the child. So the child, right, it was between 5 and 6, is obligated in the sukkah rabbinically in order to train them in mitzvot. And then comes the Chafetz Chaim. He says, the Chafetz Chaim says, what 5 or 6? Because it depends how sharp the kid is. So you could have 2 kids. One son of yours, you could train your son, you have a responsibility to train him to go to the sukkah at the age of 5. And you can have one son of yours that you have a responsibility to train him at the age of 6. And depending how sharp your son is. So that seems to be the conclusion. And I think it's very interesting that I don't know if everyone's aware of this. If you have a child that's sharp at 5 or sharp at 6, or even by 6, it sounds like that's already, you have to make sure, what?
okay, what age regard?
What age, right, it's the Shulchan Aruch.
8 years old or 9 years old, surely.
Right. So the Shulchan, I'm saying, are people aware of this? That they make sure that their son of theirs that's, let's say, 6 years old, then to make sure that they're eating in the sukkah the bread throughout the holidays, they're not eating in the house. I mean, this is something we have to look. That's the halacha. It's clear halacha, black and white. The Shulchan Aruch to train your son when he reaches the age. If he's even if you're going to say the son is not as sharp at 5, but at 6, you should train him. I want to wish everybody a beautiful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much, Jaime. You got it.
Okay.
People got to start thinking of their grandchildren. What age is my grandson going to be sitting in the sukkah?
Yeah.